You are listening to Aim Higher, a Catholic podcast designed to instruct and to encourage the daily practice of our faith. Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. This is Aim Higher podcast, and I'm Father Anthony, and with me is Sister Catherine, and Blessed Epiphany to everyone. It is, the day after the Epiphany, and
the Epiphany season's a little longer this year than last year.
Yeah, it is a bit long.
One of those. Last year was pretty short.
Yeah, those are only like 2 weeks or something. It was really, it's just, well, as you all know, or if you don't know off the top of your head, it's one of the seasons that is dependent. Its length is dependent upon when Easter is, and this year Easter is later in the month. It's the 20th of April. April 20th. So something to look forward to with Easter. I always look forward to Easter and the preparation and therein. But right now we are in the season of Christmas and a time after the Epiphany. And it just kind of brings up like various conversations. Also, I guess to the point is we are at the beginning of a new year. And it brings up just a whole conversation. It's kind of like a whole recap of what we are, what this year was, what we have taken from it, what we hope to accomplish in this coming year, by the grace of God and His will, and various things. We actually had something else planned to talk about, but as you all know, or if you don't know, you're new, welcome. We do discuss the program before we go on. We just don't, turn on the screen and go, aim higher. We talk about it. And sometimes our conversations go in a way where we kind of have to, how would you put it, sister? We kind of give each other updates, touch base with each other on various points, because it's not just the podcast we have. We have so many other projects, other things that we are involved in that we have to touch base on. And it's like, well, how about we talk about these things and what we have planned coming up for the new year. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. We were talking about it anyway. We might as well just press record. So, although it's hard to make it seem impromptu when now that
we've already kind of talked about
we kind of talked about it.
Well, one of the things we were bringing up is that recently, I guess, we were talking about how this past weekend, so within the weekend with the Feast of the Holy Name of Jesus, that down in Kentucky, they had a Christmas pageant.
Yes.
And see, that's what that was the first thing we were talking about, and how
you got the order. Good.
I try. It's been a little rough, but how our dad, which some of you may know as Mr. Lentz, Brother Thomas, our dad, he go back a little bit. This past last summer at our summer children's retreat, last couple years he's been doing a music station, and this past year, because our theme was the Old Testament, he gathered some songs that tied into that theme really well. Yeah. And he had his guitar. He's had his guitar every year, but there was something about this year that the songs just really struck a chord, strum a chord. With the children, it was very energetic, to the point that they took to it so well, did so well. We had a little concert on the last day of the retreat, and the children did great, and so great that everyone was like, well, not everyone, a lot of people, the important people, thought to ask Dad if he would be willing to come back and do their Christmas pageant, because I don't know for how many years they've been doing a Christmas pageant. I think it goes back to when our peers were young and they did some sort of program, and then there was a little bit of a lull because there weren't any young children, and now that
Yeah.
there's a lot of young children, they've been doing it for quite a few years now. And as these children get older, they can do more, and seeing how well they all take to music, they put a little program together, and dad drove down to Kentucky because, you know, us Midwesterners especially don't bet an eye to a drive that's less than 8 hours. So maybe in less than 12.
10 less than 10 hours is like, okay. I mean, it's a trip. It's a trip, but
sure. So, and the reason why we decided to bring this to the table of discussing it today is I brought up how important these experiences really are. What this is going to, for some of the children at least, to remember that not only that this was a really nice concert, really nice pageant, they had a lot of fun, but that Mr. Lentz drove down to Kentucky to work with them. Like, that's going to stand out to them at some point, that, you know, he sacrificed his time, which he was happy to do.
he has the time to do it.
Yeah. And funnily enough, right now, as we're talking,
that's very good.
Yes,
and that's
he earned his
good.
Retirement.
Yeah, he's in retirement because they had a snowstorm
in Kentucky. Thankfully, the bishop got back in time for Sunday Mass. Like, that was no problems. But Dad, right as we're talking, as far as I know, Dad is still in Kentucky.
Oh yeah, he's going to come back tomorrow. I talked to him before I got together with you, and just wanted to see if I had to have dinner ready for him tonight. And no, he says best to wait till tomorrow, and he can leave when he wants. And it's like, yeah, so he got snowed in. It's not something that we up in Wisconsin, we're used to the idea of snow, though we don't have any on the ground right now. It all melted away, but it's certainly as cold as the dickens right now. It's like 19 degrees right now.
Same here.
But the sun's out, so you know, it's still a shorts weather. But yeah. But it was kind of funny. The 2 or 3 days before Dad was getting ready to go, he and I were talking about it, and he was making his plans. And he mentioned about, you know, the snow, like when we went down for James's burial, taking his body down there, and how we just ran into this snowstorm, especially in Indianapolis, where, you know, it was ridiculous. And Dad's like, well, I got to prepare just in case that happens. And I just kind of laughed and said, yeah, probably won't happen.
It's all your fault.
It's my fault. I don't believe in jinxing, but.
Well, I guess 2 things to add to that. For those who don't know, James is our brother. He passed away, it'll be 4 years. So, and we drove his body from Wisconsin down to Kentucky because that's where he wanted to be buried. And my second point to that is, because how that worked out, Brother Pascal, who was in Kentucky, drove a U-Haul up to help us transport the body. Sorry if this is a little too grim for some listeners, but, and I remember we as we're leaving Wisconsin, we knew like there'd be some sort of inclement weather.
Yeah.
But Brother Pascal told me he does not drive in bad weather. I still have questions about that statement. So
I don't drive in bad weather. I was like, what do you consider bad weather? It's like, Brother Pascal, you've been driving too much with Father Bernard over the years. Okay.
Well, I do think since 4 years, he has definitely changed his mindset. But anyway, so Dad made the trip.
Wow. Yeah.
That's weird. So maybe there's something to Lentz's going down to Kentucky in January that brings, you know, snowy weather. I mean, we might have to test
I was
this
there
out.
last January. We were fine. Of course, I flew. So that's the key. You can't drive. You can't drive.
But as we were talking a little earlier about, you know, everything that went on with the pageant and everything, and how they said, as I was saying, these experiences matter, but they're also going to realize that here's, and I made the joke, a church elder, because Dad's probably one of the older people now, probably definitely in Kentucky, you know, as a visitor, he's probably one of the oldest. Sorry, Dad. I mean, we're not, super young either, so it kind of stands to reason. But to see someone mature to take time to engage with the children, spend time with them. I don't know when the mentality began where people felt children should be seen and not heard, or not to be seen or not be heard. I don't know when adults just wanted to just be very hands off in cultivating some sort of relationship with children. But gratefully, a lot of us are trying to break that cycle. I mean, we grew up with a lot of older people, and I don't think we really had any issues talking to adults. I mean, I wasn't very outgoing, but we knew how to have a conversation, and I think it's critical because you learn from both sides. An older person can learn from a younger person just as much as the younger person from the older person. The younger person reminds the older person of the innocence. I'm going to say the lack of responsibility. There's different. I mean, children have a responsibility. It's just maybe not as heavy as an adult.
You have the youthful energy.
Yes. Yeah. And to look at it as, okay,
the wonderment.
How wonderful. Right. And not like, oh, I mean, there's times I'll say if I could just have a fraction of some of these children's energy, I could get a lot more done, but I know that's not reality. And I don't say that to make children feel bad. It's just, not to shame them or anything. It's just, there's going to be a time where, when younger children are fighting their bedtime and they're going to be an adult, it's like, boy, I would give anything to be able to go to bed at 8:00 and not have to worry about it. So
yeah, I've said to young people, you're talking about just especially young adults, teenagers getting out of high school, or just about 20 or turning 20, and they try to make plans what to do with their lives. Of course, I always mention you consider giving God a closer look to see whether or not you have a vocation. But even just the practical things of everyday life and having to get a job, what you want to call a career. Are you looking to get married, looking to get a house, and looking also for our retirement? Because the way that things work, just having that security in the economic structure of the world, you have to have that. You have to have that in order to really to live comfortably. And so I can kind of look ahead and be like, this is the mistakes I made or the right choices I made, and be like, hey, if you get this job now and you work 30 or 40 years in this company, you're like 20, and you're 50 years old, as long as society doesn't completely go to the dogs, you're set for retirement. And they're like, well, I'm still young. You're not that young. It's gonna go by pretty quickly. Trust me.
Yes.
You talk to Dad. One of the things that he's so happy that he did was take the job at the post office, which he worked for over 30 years.
It wasn't his dream.
It wasn't his dream. I mean, Dad didn't really. He didn't. The idea of having a dream, it's so overrated. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but you just said it. It's overrated. I have my dreams and I want to go do this. I want to go do that. It's like, what about your dream of salvation?
Dream of heaven. Do you dream of heaven?
Do you think about these things? Do you consider these things? You encounter certain individuals who they grow up in an atmosphere where they are encouraged or even pushed to achieve something in this world, whether it's wealth, fame. And when we talk about wealth, I mean, you have people out there who think that if you don't make at least six figures, you're failing. You're a failure. How can you live off of that? By not making six figures.
I mean, I think I don't know what the average is, but I know here in New York, to really, I guess, may not bare bones, but you got to be up there in the that would be the 5 figures. It's almost unfathomable to me. Like if I think back of
I think 80,000.
Over 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years ago, so in my early 20s, I shared an apartment with a good friend of mine, and my rent then was pretty reasonable, manageable. And like that number, I won't even say what the number was, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's far as my knowledge, it's probably 4 times that, and probably for less space, you know. And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
I mean, like,
even
well, I mean,
probably even the same space you were in.
and I understand
French
there
Quarters.
is inflation. Inflation does happen, but there's been quite an uptick that it is almost crazy to me how in a way desensitized I am by the cost of things. Like, okay, well, we need this, so here you
Well,
go.
you
Trying to really be
get what you.
frugal.
Well, it's like a talking with a how would I describe him? Because he does more than just that, but it's a coins dealer. Does gold and silver, and we were talking about the market, and I asked him the question. I said, "So what really change? What makes it change? You know, you see the markets, you see like all the markets. What really changes it?" And he's like, "Emotion. Emotion is what changes it. People's emotions can make it. Oh, I need to sell because they hear something, they feel something, they're afraid, or they're overly confident, and then they buy." It's emotion. I'm like, well, that's scary that our whole economic structure is really based upon emotion, and things skyrocket because, well, essentially what do they say is like what the market will bear, and the inflation. I'm not alone. I never study economics. I have a very I have a I can talk about it just up to a certain point, but how how does inflation work? Why is it that though something, now that cost, $5 10 years ago now costs 10? It's the same exact product. There's nothing
Not
different.
smaller.
Why is it, well, we have to pay people more money now, and it's like okay, you're making, $5 or $10 an hour more. That's great, but the cost of everything has also increased. So you're making essentially the same amount of money you were making before. All it is just a different number, but the expenses have not changed.
And I mean, and we're not trying to make this
This
all
is
sound
not
like
what we're going
doom
to
and
be talking
gloom,
about.
but just it's just the reality of, you know, choices. You know, I don't want to
that
keep
that,
saying,
pe- that young
or
people make, and you like want to guide them correctly,
yeah.
and but the experience. So we got to give them
Well,
good experiences.
we have to give us, but we also have to cultivate a relationship where they will come to you,
Yeah.
even if they have messed up. I mean, I think that has been kind of a difficulty for a lot of people, is that somewhere along the line, a child's afraid to admit to a mistake because of a certain instance where
Mm-hmm.
them making a mistake. And I'm not talking about things that are dangerous or harmful, just a mistake, but it wasn't received well by a person in charge. Therefore, that sticks in your brain. And then you don't want to admit to mistakes. And then you get to the point where you don't try you're on the one hand, you try something or you don't try something because you're afraid to make mistakes. So you just hold yourself back on a lot of things because you won't do it perfectly. And that was me. I think the bishops pretty much rid me of that fault, if you will. um, what's the worst that could happen? You try something, doesn't work, let's fix it. I mean, I know that there are instances where things happen, things get damaged, and things get broken because someone's been careless, but most of the time it happened because it's truly an accident. And um, you should try to look that good intentions were involved. And I'm not, like I said before, I'm not dismissing, you know, I'm not dismissing um, bad behavior, but or the potential bad behavior, but just remember that you know your child, and ultimately you want your child to still be able to talk to you about things and go to you about things. And that's the same way I feel about with children that I deal with, and how you guide children. And yes, there are some things that are unpleasant about life
Mm-hmm.
in general that we all have to work through. But I'm still here for you. I will listen. And if you want some suggestions, like how do we work through this, let's work on it together. It's better than having someone be so afraid to admit it and then find a solution somewhere that isn't really actually a solution at all. So, and I know some people probably will have a problem with what I'm saying here, because yes, there has been a lot of permissive parenting, if you will. But ultimately, I have a lot of opinions about this, and I know I've said them before, but there's a balance, virtues in the middle. And yes, discipline is important, but discipline doesn't mean, the louder you yell, the better the disciplinarian are, the better it almost seems like that we feel like we have to strike really hard. Like we can at least justify striking really hard because, like, well, at least I try to have good intentions. But why is being calm, collected, and gentle not that? We look at scripture. We saw that that's how our Lord was. There was only one instance recorded where I wouldn't say he lost his cool because he's God, but we saw him get justifiably angry, because there are situations you can be justifiably angry, but ultimately we're all meant to be compassionate, because we're all fallen creatures. And I just started reading a book this year, which is one of the things I'm trying to improve on, is my actual reading. And it did bring up, if you're struggling with peace, you're not going to find it by putting other people down.
Yep.
In fact, that's you're going to exhaust yourself by, like, instead of, you really should look into yourself, but look to yourself with real honesty and compassion as well. Not to baby yourself, but just to realize that, trust in his providence, saying yes, it is so much better for you. And then don't worry so much about, well, overlook the faults of others. I mean, it does not say that you're okay with sin, but I don't know. The more you try to, because we all can be very critical of others. I mean, that's a fault I have, and I try to work through it. And one of the ways I'm trying to combat one particular thing that's kind of been grinding on me is to just, for every time there's something, I try to think of, well, what is going right by that person? And I feel like I have to be super vague, and almost being vague is like, there's no way any of our listeners, if you're trying to, who's she talking about? This isn't anything that you would know. So, because you think, well, how many people do you interact with? Father Anthony, Bishop Giles? Like, it's neither one of them.
It's me.
Yeah. Well, we talk, we discuss, and we don't always agree. And that's also something that's important to realize, is that disagreements doesn't mean, you cut the relationship off. Disagreements doesn't mean that the other person dislikes you, just you have a different opinion, and you can be okay with that. And usually we come to some sort of resolution. I don't think there's much that we disagree on at this point.
Very little.
Very little. And usually it's not anything important at this point.
No.
So, but no. You know why that is? Because we both put work into our relationship. Yes, we're brother and sister. We've known each other your entire life. And I had to do math, we've almost been separated, getting close to that amount. It's getting there. It's not super close. You're 40. Anyway, not important, but that's because we put work into this. There was highs and lows, and that's what we hope to pass along to really all of us, is that that's normal. That's normal, that there's going to be those highs and lows, and misunderstandings. I think a lot of times we struggle with communicating because we don't like to be corrected, and there's also those of us who don't like to make corrections, and so we just say nothing and let it stew, let it fester, and then there's an explosion. I think when we just try to cultivate the ideas like I'm here no matter what.
Mhm.
And that's what a lot of parents want to impress upon their children. No matter what the mistake, I'm here for you. And then at some point, a child is going to become a teenager, a young adult, and realize that mom and dad did because they'll start ticking off things like, well, mom and dad made this mistake, they did this, they did that. Because when you get to be a teenager, you start to believe that you know everything, and you don't. Adults don't know everything either, but we try. We try
It's
not.
an interesting mental state when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying that we don't try to learn, but there's a lot of developments everywhere on many areas, and ultimately with some maturity and self-reflection and really ultimately respect for your parents and even greater the love for God, you'll see that your parents did the best that they could. Not everything is going to hit it out of the park. Not every decision is the right one, but that doesn't mean that they purposely did evil, like they purposely made a bad mistake. So, and I guess all this to say is that why having these things that we do to connect, to bring people together is well, because adults need it too. Adults need to know that they have other adults that they can depend on to talk to. And even better if you have someone that can, even better if you could have someone that can spiritually check you. And that's, I was contemplating this morning on how, like something that would bug me, and I might bring it up to you. And I'm not bringing it up to you like for you to take my side on anything, but just like I need to air it out. I need to get it out of my head. And then ultimately you'll spiritually check me on it. Maybe not intentionally, but we'll start thinking, okay, but ultimately my reaction to this situation is it's a me problem. Like I realize yes, what this person is doing is very odd. I don't understand it, but how I react is on me, and if I'm going to let it bother me, that's my fault. And then you just got to kind of remind yourself to see the good of those who aggravate you. I mean, how else are you going to be patient if you don't get moments to practice patience? So
that's true.
So all these little things matter. I think I'm doing more talking than I anticipated, but
Yeah. Well,
and you anticipated too, huh?
I didn't anticipate this much, but that's okay.
You never know. You never know. I mean, I guess I'm a little unpredictable, but predictable. I can't even say it. I'm unpredictable, not being able to say predictable. Anyway, I'm just glad that we are doing these things. I mean, we have our yearly summer retreat. We're actually trying to do a youth retreat this year.
Yep.
In June. If you have any questions about that, you can email me at sistercatherine.tor@gmail.com. I do have, we have heard a little interest. So, I mean, even if we only get one or two young adults, young or teenagers, that's okay. But we have to try. We have to try. But just to give that opportunity and to maybe ask some questions that are hard, because I think we know that there's a lot of things going on in this world that you and I growing up didn't necessarily have to encounter in the same way.
Yeah, that's true.
And we all need to help each other navigate through it. And so how can we do that if these children feel like they can't be open and talk to you? I mean, sorry, I don't mean to keep going on, but there was I was listening to a podcast and someone brought up how, and it's really a beautiful thing, how there are children today who, let's say they go to an event and there's a Q&A after, that children are actually asking questions. And the person remarking on that there as an adult was like, as a child, I never would have asked a question, never, like, because that was not a thing.
Yeah.
Unless it was very specifically a children's show, very specific. But even then, I mean, you want children to feel that they can ask questions I mean, and I know there's going to be questions that come up that are kind of, oh, I really don't want to deal with this, but ultimately we will have to. And that's why, oops. Okay. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, I feel like my voice is getting tired, so maybe I should let you, let you, just stop me from, going on.
Well, I mean, all I did was ask you, do you prefer Geico or Progressive? And you went on for this whole thing.
It's Allstate.
Allstate. Allstate. Because you're in good hands.
Or is it Liberty?
No, Liberty. No, it's Allstate. You're in good
State
hands.
Farmers?
Farmers. We are
I'm
farmer.
I'm
Bum,
just naming all the possible insurance things off the top of my head. So
Mm-hmm.
don't watch too many commercials. So
We've got Acuity here in Sheboygan.
Oh, what is that? The 1-800-General now?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I know we have car insurance.
I wasn't going to talk insurance, yeah, but I have partners. I have partners insurance.
Anyway.
Yeah, for that and the vehicles. So no mutual partners. Mutual, I forget who. It's a slip of my mind. Although it's January, so I'll just get ready to pay for all that. Anyway, what are we talking about? Oh yeah, and children and everything that we're doing. Yeah, looking to do the children's a youth retreat in Rochester in June, trying to offer something to young teenagers, young adults, an opportunity for them to come together in a spiritual surrounding, but also in one where they could feel that they can, talk and ask questions and be them and anyone to be themselves, to a point. But also one of the things I like to make very clear that there is a very definite distinction between how we act during divine service while we're in church to how we act outside of it. And if you can understand that your decorum, the way that you present yourself, has to reflect your surrounding, I think that's a good lesson. Because unfortunately, so many people, there's a kind of a casual idea about going to church. And I think this can affect even our young Catholics because they see, non-Catholics, Novus Ordo, and all these things doing all that. So you want them to really kind of understand that there is joy. There is I find an excitement in taking part in the liturgy. Now, some people have in the liturgy and how the laity are meant to take part into it. But there are certain things that I find exciting. I've always enjoyed. Not everyone has that affinity. Is that a word? That's not a word.
Affinity is a word, but I don't know.
Yeah, the context of, yeah. Oh, and I just embarrassed myself. But affinity to certain things, like music or ceremony.
Affinity works.
But really, the part that all Catholics need to develop, and I say need, I'm not saying you should, you need to, is to have that sense of the sacred. And that's the point that we're looking, even in those more lighthearted situations like we have at the camps, to understand you're down there having doing music. You're down there with Chesterton, the dragon. You're doing all these fun things. Great. But when you get back up at the church, you refocus because Jesus is there in the tabernacle. And that's now we talk about the impression that this has on young people. And especially when you have older people taking interest, I will never forget Mrs. Follett when it was just her and I at one point when I was a little boy, like at 4 or 5, and she was doing like we were reading a story, doing like, cards and a little bit. This was before I was actually in school, but I had to like stick around for a while and she was afraid. So she kind of did little classes with me. You remember that. And children remember these things. They are positive things about coming to church. And then, um, in associating yourself with priests, with sisters, and the elders of the church, as it's put it, and finding that we really are meant to be as one family, even though you show respect in different ways. We are meant to come together as a family, and that you should not feel that excluded, left out. You should want to engage yourself into it, and even if you don't engage yourself the same way everyone else does, because you have a different temperament, you might not be an outgoing person, but you can at least engage to a point and always realize, I want to be, in church. If you can develop to have that private life, you are imitating Jesus by wanting that seclusion and that prayer, just like some are imitating Jesus and being going out and preaching of the gospel. Yeah, sometimes the gospel, not really the gospel, but truth can be preached in a funny way. And we have fun doing it. And it's like, that's why I really love that we have music as such a big part of it. And this is what the children remember. You talked about the children last year. It was a lot of
Well,
fun.
that's what, and knowing how much music impacted us, and I think
Mm.
really helped us in our faith formation, if you will. I feel like that has such a modern twinge to it, but
Yeah, but it's
it's an
true.
accurate.
It's still
It's true.
true. It's inaccurate. And
Yep.
well, I give an example. Talk about things that we're looking to do. It's like, what are we looking to do 2025? This is the first year I've done this. Few things I've been wanting to do, just in church, just in the liturgy and ceremony, things that we have not done because, quite frankly, I'm busy and they can leave my mind. And then, of course, you find the more that you take time for meditation, you're better easily to remember these things. So, it's like, oh, meditate more. Nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that went to do is on the Feast of the Epiphany. There are special blessings that are done. Uh, but actually on the eve of the Epiphany, there is the Epiphany water that is blessed. It's a whole ceremony that resembles in many ways uh, the Easter water on Holy Saturday. It's a very long ceremony, and had I had the morning mass in Wabaka at Our Lady of the Rosary, and
Oh,
and
on
I
the
didn't
day
have to
before.
rush out so quickly, I might have done it, and then I would have need time to prepare it. But on Epiphany, since it was on Monday, I did two blessings. One was the blessing of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and did another blessing of chalk. Now, it's an old tradition, and I know it was really, excuse me, it was really popular in Central Europe, and it harkens back to the Old Testament of when well, actually, I probably should, before I say harkens back to the Old Testament, let me tell you actually what you do with the chalk. With the chalk, what you do is that you take the chalk and you kind of outline your door, your entranceway, and you write on the top of there. And the tradition says you write the first two numbers of the year, and then at the end you do the final two numbers. In between those numbers, you have CMB, and as the names Casper, Melchior, and Balthazar. I know what you were thinking now when you
I
started
know.
laughing. And so, and there's also a pious tradition that also can stand for uh, Christus mansionem benedicat. And it's like, may Christ bless this house. And there's actually a whole ceremony for blessing of houses in Epiphany, and I'm guessing it could be done after the Epiphany, even maybe before, but after the Epiphany, to go to people's homes and do this really elaborate blessing. It's quite fascinating, but people can take the blessed chalk and do that over their own houses and make a little bit of a ceremony. If you have young children, especially, doing things like this have an impact. We've talked about this so much on the program. One of the reasons I wanted to do it, I had a few people mention it to me who have started coming to Our Lady of the Rosary, and I was like, I never heard of it. And the people are like, Father, how could you not hear of it? Our community never did it. So it's not like you're supposed to do it. It's just a custom we never took on. And I said, I'd like to do it. And so I did it this year. And I just fortunately had incense and myrrh. Incense I had myrrh, and I had a new golden chalice, a little small little thing that I had. So it was perfect. It worked really well. And what I did is that I did the ceremony. There's no real set ceremony other than just the blessing itself. So went out before Mass. It could be done anytime on the day. And we began with the Veni Creator, which is one of my favorite hymn. It, it just screams Franciscan to me, the Veni Creator. And then did the blessings. After each blessing, which were two of them, I gave them the English translation because I don't think they had the English. And then we finished with the Te Deum. And then we had Mass. Those are the type of things and that really would have an impact upon people. Those are the type of things that we did when I look back as a kid, had an impact on me. And I go back, you want to recreate that. I mean, even to this day, there's the tradition of the silence on a Good Friday that I really want to maintain that, even for myself. Just when I'm by myself. Well, who are you going to talk to? Well, don't get on the phone. Don't do anything else. You don't need to do office work, Father. You don't need all that. Holy Week, basically, you get everything done before you go. Um, allow yourself to be immersed in the spiritual meaning of the custom. Allow yourself to be engage it, and that's why we look to engage young people in this. As some of the young people have come out, but unfortunately, they had to come a distance and they were sick, uh, so they weren't able to come. Actually, it was one family who they homeschool, and they were going to go back to school this week, and it was Monday, yesterday.
Well, people that are listening to the podcast
and,
aren't necessarily sure.
now what? It's a day in the week, but they said, well, actually going back to school. They've been off of school for an extended period of time. I'm like, well, but I want them to come to this service. I want them to take part in this. So this is kind of school too. Then I said, well, how about we make it a lesson? We'll talk about the three kings, and of course, when there's ever an opportunity for me to tell a story with children, basically it's like, is Chesterton going to be there? Chesterton the dragon. Maybe I should bring him on the podcast sometime and people can see it. But doing Chesterton the dragon, like, okay, yeah, we can do something with Chesterton. So since the circumcision, I've been thinking on it, and it wasn't until Sunday, until Saturday, Sister and I were talking about it, and we came up with an idea. Is you don't just tell the story. You gotta write out a bit. You gotta write out a little play with me and Chesterton talking, because I have to be father. And that's the one thing you kind of realize. And well, one nice thing about actually having a puppet is that I can be silly, talking to the children in a silly way, but it's not Father Anthony. It's Father Anthony is the straight man. Father Anthony is the one who has to teach the children.
And I was just going to add, because what was nice in the example, because in this lesson with Chesterton, you did have to correct Chesterton, but you did it in a very kind way. I mean, maybe you weren't planning for that to be anything, but I just started thinking about that now.
I
That
did plan it to be something when I
okay,
wrote it.
and
I well,
but how important that is.
what happened was
You
that
got
now
carried away.
because we do a lot. Like I said, we talk about so many things we're planning on doing, and the children's retreat has become like a high point. Like we build up. We've had Bridget Edgington on here before talking about the children's retreat, and we kind of have a planners meeting
Well,
in
that'll be coming
January.
up.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll be
just thinking
coming
like
up,
we're gonna probably be
and it's going to
not
be a long.
planning, but
It's
um
it's like
mailing some.
kind of mailing things out, brainstorming ideas, what we're going to do. Um,
Let's see.
so I sent what I wrote to her because I like her opinion, and she came and said, "Father, this is good. Say thank you." Says, "How about we do an impromptu Chesterton show?" Like, and this was on this was on Sunday,
Okay.
and it was like 5 o'clock in the evening on Sunday after I had mass, and I was like, well. Like I only just started writing this thing, and I was going to do something in the morning with its families. Well, the family was sick. They ended up getting sick that day, so they didn't come out. So I planned to do it 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We got it all together. I thought it went really well. I thought the children really enjoyed it, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you, um, it tickled me a bit when you told me that when the children down in Kentucky had, because dad went down and doing music, the children were asking for Chesterton. They thought Chesterton was going to be there. And I said, that kind of, it makes me happy that Chesterton has been such a hit. And I was like, I got to do more with him and you do more
Yeah,
of this
that's
type of stuff. It's really nice.
yeah.
And but harkens back. I remember back in my children's theater days, what the lady who was the producer of it, Barb Lynch, told me, when you do these shows, you have to have a moral lesson, something
Mhm.
for the children to learn from. And it's stuck with me. I didn't necessarily agree with her at the time because I was young and stupid and thought, if you're not getting a laugh, it was a waste of time. But yeah, there needs to be a lesson, something that you can really take from it, and the humor just helps you to process it, to absorb it.
That's why I think storytelling is essential, and anyone who listens to the bishop's sermons that we post
Hmm.
online, most Sundays he's telling a story. Well, there's a lot of children in Kentucky, but
Yeah,
we also, any of us adults could probably admit that we benefit from the story just as much. Like we almost need the story too. Let's take it down a few notches.
it
And
helps. Well, that's why our Lord spoke in parables. It our Lord did not develop the concept of parables. It was already a practice, especially in the Middle East. It was a way of conveying a deeper truth by the means of a story. Our Lord was just using a format that was already there.
yeah, I mean, I suppose although you could say as creator, or
Well, okay, if you
like
want to go, yeah, yes, of course, we all understand that, but I think we all get what
but
I mean
he
here.
he used a custom that was already in place. Yes,
He
he's
used
healed.
it, and I think we can say he perfected it. Okay.
Yeah, I would
Our
agree.
Lord is the master class when it comes to storytelling. He is. And there's
Yes.
no better stories of great inspiration than the ones our Lord have told. And they're simple, easy to absorb. And that's what we love to do with the kids and and adults for that matter. And
Yeah.
so we have these bringing people together. It's one of the reasons, like you have parish dinners, you have picnics, which I gotta call place up and see if I can schedule to rent a space for that. Of course, I got to find a Sunday sister where I can actually pull this off because there's so much happening.
September, Father.
In this, to do it in September.
That's a good time of year to do a picnic, usually.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree.
might be September. It's just got a lot
There's
going on.
there's a lot going on, but I was just going to add to these events that are centered around children.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the adults are just as motivated,
Mm-hmm.
and they all, bring something back too. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you
like
know, there's a good thing going when you have families that come from out of state. And the one family here in New York, I mean, they plan a vacation around it. I mean, they don't try to do too much, but they this is part of their yearly summer thing for the foreseeable future. They look forward to it, but the adults are just as into it. I mean, because I know we brought up before, this is not a situation where you drop off your children and come back later.
Yeah, you have to be involved.
Yeah, and you should be. You should know what your children are learning, and it might make you think about where you're lacking in your knowledge. Because I think, well, we've talked about this a lot. There's never learning your Catholic faith never stops. It's a lifelong journey of learning, and that's what's wonderful about it. That's what's exciting about it, because we always want more, don't we? So how about more catechism, more virtue, more love for God? It's just, if you have that energy, and you absolutely can. It's put it in your mind and determining to do so. No one can do it for you, but we can all encourage each other along the way, and that's why having that involvement, participating, and I will just add, to any of our listeners who don't have children but are interested in these events and maybe want to help out, you can also reach out to us. Volunteers are welcome. Just we just ask that you're going to come there to actually help us and not just make it more challenging. But it's so well organized, and that is definitely not my skill set. But this also shows how you bring people with different skill sets together and make it work. And I think that's also something that the children probably aren't super aware of now, but we'll look back and see how many people work together, adults work together to make this possible. And they'll appreciate it. And you want to know why and you know how I know they'll appreciate? Because I have the same mindset for all the things that people did for us growing up. And I mean, I've actually told people later on, written some of that, how much I appreciate them. Like they didn't know at the time, and you may not have known it by my attitude, depending on how old I was, but I am glad that you did it anyway. It had to have been hard, especially as we were probably getting to be teenagers. It had to be hard to show up when you could just be, you know what? I don't need this attitude. I don't need this. I don't deserve this. Forget it. But still showing up and struggling, but yet fighting for it, because it says you're fighting for us. You're fighting to make a difference, and you're fighting for yourself too. I mean, nothing worth having doesn't require an element of work and sacrifice. I mean, that's the message that needs to be out there more, because I think too often the world's going to tell you, take the easy path, make it simple. You shouldn't have to suffer, work too hard, but ultimately anything worthwhile requires the discipline and sacrifice. That's the honest truth.
Well, we
be confused with the dishonest truth.
We all know that just by our experience, just by the human condition, because the things that stick with us most are those trials that we had to overcome, those difficulties that we had to find a way to make the best of it, learn from it. Those things that made us stronger. Those are the things that stick with us. And looking to supply the youth with this, and looking to basically give them what I had as a child. And we've talked about this a lot about the interaction with the clergy, with the religious, is very important. Um, they're not going to think about a vocation if they don't see a vocation. Um,
Yep.
and it just, this is what can, inspire. This is the actual grace that touches the soul, uh, and no matter how young they are. And that's why the more that we can do for the children to be involved, and for all the parishioners, everyone to be involved, it's spare no expense, as they say, within reason, of course. But we've talked about, we got the children's retreat coming up. We've got doing stuff for the youth, which is like conferences and such, but also group discussions and various activities, depending on how many you have.
Right.
Do
Yeah. Just to kind of shed a little light on it, the idea is giving, and I put 13 and up, and I'll just add that and up, exceptions can be made. So contact me, we'll see what we can do. I mean, but what we wanted to give that age bracket a chance to is to attend daily mass,
Mm-hmm.
Sit in on have some conferences. And right now the plan is that both, Father Anthony is going to be there and then the bishop will be there, and to maybe have like a dialogue. And then, we'll have some free time. We'll do something fun. Well, of course, one of the things I was thinking is that maybe Father could teach them all how to polish. So here's all our vessels. Here's
here's a fun activity.
well,
Who
it
can
actually
this,
can be fun. You
who
can make it
can
competitive.
who can get who can get the most followers done in 10 minutes?
It's, I mean, just it's a small chapel, so there's not a lot. How about
You
that?
will win a
But
It's like you will win the grand prize. But a thumbs up from me.
I mean, so we're, take part in, we'll have benediction, rosary. I want to put something out where they can all write in a question anonymously, like something that they really want to know but are too afraid to ask, that there's an option and you or the bishop can answer it. But we'll have playtime. Depending on the response, we may do an outing.
Mm-hmm.
But just
Yeah.
the religious will say divine office, so you'll get to experience what that's like,
Yep.
which it's very beautiful. I just remember when I first started learning it, I kept thinking, boy, I wish I would have known more about this
Mm-hmm.
before. But I learned it once you, it's not that hard to learn. If I can do it, anybody can
It's
do it.
nice to
But
be exposed to it.
yeah, but just to have that opportunity. I mean, Dad's probably coming with you. I think that's the plan. We could sing,
Yeah, he and I never discussed that. So
but we're hoping for a really nice time. It's going to be a nice time, but just to have that chance to go and have, because there's a lot of property, you can go out and back and sit by the chickens and meditate, read, just to have that environment. And this is not a opportunity to say, well, because we obviously do hope for vocations to the religious life. This is not necessarily strictly about that, because ultimately I want everyone to take away the idea of maintain the spiritual while we're still in the world, and how to make that possible. Because one of the things that you and I were talking about, and we're going to kind of bring into this year, is that how easily the world distracts us. And we get so burnt out by all the responsibilities of the world, and yet we still we go to worldly distractions to distract us from the world. Whereas really the only thing that's going to strengthen you to get through this life is the spiritual distraction, if you will. Find something that's
well,
really,
that's an
really,
interesting way of looking at it. The spiritual distraction. Yeah, you don't think of it that way.
let God distract you. But that's one of the but
There
that's
you
one of the things
go.
I personally tried to work on this year, is do more spiritual reading. I mean, I read a lot of content for a lot of various things, but actually just sitting and reading for my own self has kind of fallen to the wayside. And how easy it is to fall into the traps of scrolling on whatever. It could be YouTube, it could be other platforms. I mean, we all fall prey to that too. I've gone through a purging of my electronics. It's like, I don't need to be that reachable. And I've been putting like the phone in like one spot. If it's a severe emergency, which no one really is ever going to need to contact me for something serious. But I do check my phone, but there's, if you need to get through, it will get through, but nothing, just because I have to learn this, just because I get a text message at this one moment doesn't mean I have to respond to it at that same moment. I mean, yes, there's a fear that I might forget, but I think within like a 24-hour response, if it's not that important, is okay. Like, you have to
48 hours if you're really
but it's just, sometimes I do miss the days where I didn't have a cell phone, and it felt pretty terrific. Very limited computer stuff, but
when my
but
phone
unfortunately,
it's nice.
but unfortunately, the world today is that there is a need for that connection, because we do have a social media platform, and I'm just trying to like minimize. I don't have to respond to everything right away, not every email right away. Just so, and telling myself, just so that I'm making sure that I'm making the appropriate time for God. But making everything you do a prayer. If you say your morning offering, you're on a good track.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a good year. It's going to be a great year, Father.
So it's time for our awkward silence portion. No,
well, let's see, I'm awkward.
And then we have
silent, but not right now.
But just so many different things. We're going to be bringing back. I did it one year and doing the Lenten retreat, Mission Day. That's gonna. I hope that goes well. You have to offer people things. You can get discouraged if you don't get the turnout you wanted originally, but it's like, but you have to keep offering it, and
and modify it if needed,
and modify it, and it works. But big thing that we're doing this year that I'm looking forward to is the children's retreat, because we're also combining with that. At the end of it, there's going to be a celebration. We're kind of using, I think we can explain it here. We're using Bishop Giles's 20th anniversary kind of as a reason, a platform, but it kind of goes beyond that, because we're having the retreat in July, and he was ordained and consecrated in August. But so it didn't really need to be that, but a reason for the clergy to get together, to have a solemn high mass, the children to be involved, the young men who are servers to be involved in this. Bishop Madrigal is going to come for this, and these experiences are important. So on that Friday, we'll have them engage in this. So the children's retreat technically is going to miss a day, but it's all connected with it, really. And I'm really looking forward to this time, and among other things, a lot of other things are coming up, and what we're doing with the faithful, our friends in Europe, our friends in Mexico, and working with them, various different things. I know some traveling is in my near future into different places. I guess it's fun. I'll be going back down to Chile next year in January, and there's a lot of fun, interesting things that are happening. And it just reminds me of St. Paul and all that he did. It reminds me of so many wonderful saints who accomplished so much in very little time. How did they do it? Because they did it all for the love of God. That was their first and primary reason for doing anything. And they used the talents that God gave them, to his greater honor and glory. And that's what you're looking to really inspire the youth to use their talents, to inspire the older ones to say, hey, you still have a talent you can use for God. So there's so much that, we're looking to get out of this. And what do we get out of it? Is an interesting question. Like, as with the work you put into, what do you get out of it? Um, Never really thought about that. It just popped in my head. My hope is that those who attend these things get something from it, take something home, and it's another stepping stone closer to Christ. That's what we are. Our whole point as being the clergy, being religious, what we're supposed to do. That's our purpose of existence here, is to do that. And I'm excited, and I am just looking forward to
And,
this year.
you know, as much as Easter seems really far away at this point,
It's
it's
not.
going to sneak up on us. So, and then
It's not.
after Easter, it's really only a few weeks, and then it'll be the youth retreat, and then it'll be the children's retreat, and then it'll be whatever we have going on in the fall, and then
Yeah.
and then it'll be Christmas again,
And
and
then we're going to have Aim Higher, at which this is our third year.
Mhm.
3
We
years.
started in 2022, and it's kind of hard to believe how that really developed. Well, not really weird to believe how it developed, but I mean, I'm definitely still shocked that I talk a lot more. I wasn't anticipating on
Mm,
saying much at all when we did this. It's like both say be Father Anthony, and I'll have some thoughts. And as you all have learned, I have a lot of thoughts, and I can once I start going, and especially on certain topics, I can be very
yeah. Yeah. You know. Yeah.
but but it was just we were just trying something. We weren't sure of it, and I shared the recording with our lovely Bridget because she's the one that
Our
she's really
sounding
good at
board.
giving. She's our sounding board. She's really good at giving feedback. Doesn't hesitate to say, "Yeah, I don't think that'll work, but how about this?" And that is a great skill. Um, and we've tried all sorts of things, but I let her listen to our kind of like trial or demo, and she's
I
like, "I think
remember.
this, yeah, I think that would be very helpful and very beneficial."
I remember
Um,
that.
so
It's just like anything, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and you just have to put on a good pair of shoes and start walking. And that's essentially what
see,
this is. And we're hoping to continue to do it in one medium, one form or another. And this is
it
this is
just
it's not dying anytime soon. So
no. I mean, I know we've had a couple of replays lately, but the season of Christmas leading up to is very
yeah,
busy, and you and I aren't getting less to do as the years go by. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm grateful for being busy. Don't get me wrong, but it's just there's a lot on our plate. But we're encouraged by our response because our YouTube channel just now we hit over 500, but December not
Um,
that long ago. We're already at 538 subscribers. So,
when you
and we
can,
were only like I think end of last year we weren't quite at 200. So, is that a huge number? It is for us. It is
not
for
in the
us.
grand scheme. Well, with content such as this, especially when you begin, yeah, this is kind of standard of what you see. When you have kind of the pop culture topic, and you get a following, yeah, it's a lot easier to get a lot of people. This is a very special
I'm
area. So
I'm okay with a slow build. Like too much too fast. It's just I mean, I hope to be a little bit quicker in my building of the Growing Holiness channel, not so much subscribers as content.
mm,
I did recently put a video up about the Epiphany with the help of Father Anthony on that one. And I did gain a couple of subscribers. And it's just funny because I was looking at some of the videos, and the most popular video I have on there is the 3 Theological Virtues, which has over 1,000 views. I'm not sure why. Not sure. There must have been something in that title that just hit people's algorithm, but and I'm getting some really wonderful comments on our videos lately from Mexico, so it's just very encouraging. I really want to. I have ideas. It's just figuring out how it's all going to flow, and getting the artwork because we gratefully have someone very talented to do artwork for us. So it's basically
mhm.
this is what I need, And then, obviously she's a mom with 4 young children, so it's not going to be. She's actually very quick.
You got to plan in advance to make
but
sure
it's just like it's like
enough time.
Right. It's kind of like, I just need this, within a month, but not send her like, I need this next week. Like she probably would do it, but I would hate to ask
this
that.
tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, I would hate that kind of time crunch.
I need 11,000 copies of this by 6:00 tomorrow morning.
But I mean, just as we talked about with our coloring book for the 12 Days of Christmas, I mean, I had people asking for some just based off the podcast. I colored in mine. It was very helpful to have.
Oh, mine's still sitting here. I haven't colored it in yet.
You've been busy. I had more time.
Excuse me.
During the break of Christmas.
It's not good to be yawning during your own podcast.
That's because I've been doing all the talking and I'm boring. So anyway, we're excited.
I wasn't gonna say it. Mostly because it's not true. So
I know.
But no, it's a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be excited for, and many reasons to want to grow closer to God, and many reasons to grow closer with one another in the love of God, and to really share that. It's very encouraging, and this year looks like it's going to be one of many blessings. And even if you have things that we would call trials occur, those are blessings. Those are blessings that you just haven't figured out yet. So, all right, well, sister, it was wonderful kind of talk with you about. And
I'm excited.
I'm excited. We'll keep people updated on it. It's really exciting.
Yes. You're welcome to email us, and if you wanted to know more about Father's Lenten mission or any of those details,
we will have this available in some way of social media, one way or the other. So, with all that said, sister, Deo gracias.
Deo gracias.